I have another Jenny recording, so
okay, yeah.
then she uploads it for me because I'm a complete dope at it. Although I did manage to do it yesterday, but Jesus. Anyway, good morning, Jenny Keane.
Good morning. How are you? It's nice to see you.
Great. Lovely to see you as well. I have to admit, I did peep in. I feel like I've seen that room before because I voyeuristically peeped in yesterday at your yoga class. And as I said to you yesterday, I felt like a Russian spy, so I came back off again because I wasn't doing the yoga. I was just having a look to see you. Anyway,
well, you can peep for as long as you want.
I know. Well, anyway, I'll give a quick bio because it's easier, Jenny, for me to do it because people hate saying things about themselves, I've discovered.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we know each other about, 25 years?
Yeah.
Mum and myself are friends for a very long time. And
yeah, I've been in that pink kitchen many times before.
You have indeed. Many times. If this kitchen table could talk, Jenny, I tell you.
I still remember stealing do you know the little Halibut orange tablets, the vitamin C ones from with Sophie, and just taking all, you're like, only one, and then we come back and have more.
Do you know, if that's the worst thing you ever did, I'll let you away with it. It saved a few worse things in your life. Anyway, we don't have that much time on this because you have to try and post it on Instagram. It's tricky with long videos.
Yeah.
So we probably could chat all day, but just to give a background on you, first of all, the idea of even talking to you made me feel sick because I feel like an old hag because you just look so unbelievably fabulous and healthy. And I'm thinking, oh my God, she won't have makeup on, the hair will be natural, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we know each other a long time, and you started off, actually, the last time we had a long conversation, I had written a children's book about 10 years ago, do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted you to animate it. And we sat down in Les Amis, when it was back Les Amis in Clontarf, and you were working in Windmill Lane at the time as an animator.
Yeah. Yes,
and if I remember correctly, you were working about 14, 15 hours a day?
At least.
At least. You were like, it was ridiculous. You were completely, you were always brilliant at drawing. And so then after that, I'm going to hand over to you now because it's your story. So after that then, Jenny, you decided to throw in the towel and walk away from the corporate life as such, the day job. Yeah? So what, Tony, then, you take over.
I realized, I was like still in my early 20s, and I was looking around one day and I was just like, I don't want this to be my life. I don't want to be chained to a computer like for the entire day. I don't want to not be seeing my friends. I don't want, me, like I've always been very active, like very physical. Like I loved sports from the moment I think I could walk, and in this job that I had, I wasn't able to do any of that. And there was a series of events that led to, I think, as everyone does, there's this beautiful poet called Mark Nepo that says, you're either broken open or you willfully shed. And I think at a certain point or you willfully shed.
Okay.
So at a moment in your life where you feel all of this, this, people call it anxiety and people call it depression. It's like where the heart is not aligned anymore. And you're in this tug of war between who you want to be and how you're actually living. And for me, I definitely was broken open, like ripped apart. My boyfriend at the time, who I'd been with for 5 years, broke up with me. And in the midst of that heartbreak, I was like, oh my God, if love isn't what I think, isn't what I thought it was, which was for me, I meet someone, I fall in love, we get married, we buy a house, have children. And I was like, Jesus, and when someone says, I'm going to love you forever, they mean it, And I was like, God, if love isn't what I think, what I thought it was, then what does that mean about everything else that I believe in? And at that point in time, I was like, I have to leave. So I basically packed my bags. A month later, I was in New Zealand becoming a ski instructor because I'd always wanted to do that. And that began me like a little a trip then which lasted 8 years, almost 9 years, traveling around the world. and I became a yoga teacher. I was already practicing yoga, and it was probably the only thing that was saving me during my time in Windmill. And I got it. I kind of got into that much deeper once I started traveling and had my world kind of opened up to me. And yeah, then I started to take on well, essentially I found what my heart wanted to do, which was teach yoga.
Okay, well, I've seen your Instagram. I mean, your hello at Jenny Keane. Your Instagrams, Jenny, or your Jenny Keane Instagram, is their photographs are magnificent. We've all been kind of drooling for years watching you in rainforests and Indonesia, and I mean, you just look like a complete child of nature. I mean, your poor mammy has to be sick about you all the time, but I mean, you just look like you. And even the whole moon thing, I mean, you really bought into it in an enormous way, Jenny, didn't you? You really tuned right into nature.
Yeah, you can't not, I think, when you're in that world. You know, I'm actually very lucky because my mum and dad have always really supported me. And, you know, like whenever I would come home, mum would be like, just go away again. You know, she's like, you're much happier when you leave. You know, most people are like, when are you coming home? Mum is like, go.
No, but then I have to come around to the big question. So when you started doing your yoga, because this is, I just heard about it. Actually, I only saw this after I'd asked you the other day to come on and chat.
Yeah.
And you're doing orgasm now classes. I thought, oh my God, your poor mother has to be putting her head under the duvet for these. But even you talking about.
They're used to me now.
I read your views the other day on Ireland and sex and the whole thing and how awful we are at the whole thing. I totally agree. I mean, you had Belgrove and Holy Faith Sex Education, which was probably put a newspaper between you and the boy in case you get pregnant, which was mine. It was exactly what we were told. Put a newspaper on your if you sit on his knee, put a newspaper. The nuns told us in Bowman School, put a newspaper between you and the boy in case the sperm might rise and make you pregnant. And this is with your clothes on. So, you know what? I'm not quite sure Ireland is much different now. We're still quite shocked by the whole thing. So tell me your angle on that. Very brave to take on the orgasm thing in Ireland. Very brave.
For me, for me, it's funny because people have been saying this to me, like, you know, oh, you're so brave. And for me, it doesn't feel brave at all. It feels completely normal and it feels right, you know, because I really believe this. I've always believed it. I've been very sexually open, even though I didn't have sex for the first time until I was 19. I've always been very sexually open, and I think that's the gift that my parents kind of gave me as well. But when I started traveling, I realized how disconnected I was, you know, and I didn't have any problems sexually. Like, I was actually very open sexually, having great partners and great sexual experiences. But I realized how disconnected I was from myself, and I came to Tantra yoga. And Tantra yoga is, nowadays people think Tantra is synonymous with the word sex, but that kind of happened, you know, more so coming from America in the 70s and 80s when they separated Tantra yoga, the sexual part of Tantra yoga, from its whole. But Tantra yoga is really just a practice that allows you to connect deeply to yourself, and the sexual part of Tantra yoga allows you to share that connection in relationship to another or others. And for me, the things that I was learning in this process, and it comes from a spirit of a very deep connection to what is my spirit, and what I would say God. What I was realizing is, like, Jesus, like, no one even has the basic information. And so I went even deeper still then to start going in. And you know, I've always been a mad person when it comes to education. I've loved education, and I've always been very interested in self-educating as well. And so I just kind of went into the deep end with this, and started working with women first of all, and this was through my own experiences. I had terrible issues with my menstruation since it began. I'd be like on the floor with pain, you know, and cramps for 2 weeks, bleeding all over the place. So I was put on the pill really young, not because I was having sex, but to get a handle on my menstrual cycle. And the pill does not fix the problem. It puts a patch over it. And so I came off the pill, and all these problems came back, and I found actually connecting to myself and connecting to my sexuality was one of the really big ways I kind of, you know, started to bring myself back into my own rhythms and my own cycles, and I learned so much. And for me, the kind of the issue that we have in our culture is that we our culture doesn't teach us to value pleasure. Sometimes we even hear the word and it's kind of like it gets sucked out of our head like a vacuum, because we because we're taught there's no value in it. But we do know what hard work is, and we
Mhm.
do know what attaining goals are and working towards those goals are, because this is what society puts a weight on and puts a value on. And
Mhm.
I always think that if, like, you already know this, everybody knows this, when you get to the end of your life, you don't put value on attaining your goals and whatnot. You put value on the pleasurable experience that you had. And that doesn't, when I talk about pleasure, I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about like engaging with your daughters, engaging with your children, engaging with life, going and exploring the world in many different ways, enjoying the food you're eating. And for me, this is pleasure. So orgasm is, kind of like, definitely, like, if we're talking about pleasure, why not start at the pinnacle of it? But
Yeah.
for me, it's much more about how do you teach people to take pleasure as a practice, because we have a choice in every single moment,
Mhm.
to choose to be numb, to choose to be blind to the things that are filling us up, or to choose pleasure. And even something as simple as the breath, you can choose to take the breath in, to just breathe unconsciously, like, it's happening anyway, so you don't have to think about it. Or
Mhm.
you can choose to take the breath as a practice in pleasure, where you feel the most intimate touch through your nose, through your throat, into your lungs, this intimate connection to touch the deepest part of yourself that nobody else can touch. And in that,
I mean,
like,
you're doing
this
this
is
with women, is it not? You're doing this with women, for women, mainly, am I right? Rather than, I mean, it's not. It's a different issue with men. Obviously, it's a different
actually
experience.
actually, I work with men as well, and I also work with couples. So in
Yeah.
Asia, I was doing this work with everybody. But the work that I'm doing right now, I'm gearing it towards women first. But
Okay.
men are equally as interested. I mean, men are very curious, about how,
Are women? Are you teaching women how? Like, obviously, if they have a partner, they have to, a new partner, or whether it's an old partner. It's up to them to tell the men what the the experience that they're looking for. There's no point in lying back and thinking of England. I mean, it's up to
Mhm.
the women, isn't it, to be brave enough to actually say what they want and what they're looking for? Is that the problem? Is that what women are afraid to do?
A lot of the time, but that also comes from not knowing themselves what it is that they like.
Okay.
Because, self pleasure and masturbation is something, especially for women, that we're taught is, shameful, dirty. You don't do that. You don't definitely don't talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
because good girls don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do it, there's very little information, out there that you can find that isn't coming from channels like porn, for example,
Yeah,
which is
stories.
really
Right.
geared towards a goal orientated experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
porn is, one orgasm, and it finishes when the man ejaculates. And if the woman is squirting somewhere in the middle of that, great, they probably got extra viewers. So there's this very much like a thing around goal orientation. But at a certain point in someone's life, and I think all of us feel this, and this is part of the developmental stages of erotic intelligence, you come to a point where you say, like, there has to be something more than this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at that moment in time where you start to seek information and seek education, where you start to say, like, okay, how can I slow down? How can I connect more? How can I bring sensation to where maybe I feel numbness? And so, first of all, it's about the invitation to begin to explore in a way that is without shame. And one of the ways to release shame, and you have to do it, you take it as a pleasure, as a practice in a systematic way to basically rewire your brain. You know, I could talk about this in terms of the scientific side of things and what it's doing to your brain, but it's probably too much for now. But you're rewiring the way the nerves are firing. You're rewiring your entire body to begin to take pleasure and to learn how to expand that capacity of pleasure. And I think once you know the pathways of pleasure in your own body, it's much easier for you to share that with somebody, you know, and tell them this is what I like. But that only comes when you know what that is, you know, and that only comes from exploration. And
Jenny,
that only comes.
how intimate do your online classes get? How intimate can an online class get?
So the ones that I'm doing right now, these are very much introductory level, and this is very much like the sex education that you've never received, because we've received nothing, as you said, newspaper. Okay. So it's kind of like demystifying the orgasm in the beginning, and then also as well just putting like things in your head. Some of the things are so simple and so obvious, and you know, I've had women just go like, I've never been told that, and it's so obvious, you know. Sometimes it's just about hearing it, and then some of the stuff is definitely more intricate, and you wouldn't be hearing it from places. So but it's very much basic sex education. And I really believe that, you know, like really to once you're educated in how the body works, once you're educated, like most women have not looked at their vagina, like most are at their vulva, they definitely haven't, like most women haven't, like very rarely if ever explore, other than, you know, to attain what would be a tension release orgasm, which is mostly serviced by the clitoris, you know, which is, you know, you're building to a climax, then there's a moment of you know, a moment of completion or a moment of orgasm, and then there's a feeling of completion afterwards, and this is a tension release orgasm. And there's much deeper paths that, you know, all women can access. You know, some women think that they can't orgasm, they've never had it, so they're never going to have it, and it's a complete and utter lie. You know, the first thing to know is that all women can access orgasm, and all women can access all of the orgasms. Some women say like, oh, you know, some women are like, oh, I squirt, and this is what they hear when they're, you know, teens, you know, and they're like, oh, well, I don't squirt, and I can't, so that means I can't. And it's actually just about learning the pressure points in your body and then learning how to touch them. And so in these workshops, it's mostly just about the sex education. In deeper workshops, I do say, you know, this is this point, this is where it is, and this is how you would work with it. And also there's very deep healing to be accessed in this place for women, and how you would work with the clitoris versus the G-spot or even the cervix. Each of these offer very different healing qualities in the body as well. And so
okay, let me stop you there, because we're going to go on too long, because we have a couple of things just we have to cover. One of them, I have to say, it's completely fascinating. I think you're fabulous to be doing it. You're doing it so naturally. And I do think Ireland really is still, you know, oh my God, morto, you know. And I think you're fabulous to be doing it so casually and so beautifully said, I have to say. So fair play to you. They need to have you on the Late Late Show. Do you remember, like, because it's only years ago, you will not remember this, when I was a kid, I think, Gay Byrne got a banana, and he peeled the banana and he put a condom on it, Jenny, and the next day the whole of Ireland was completely in shock. I mean, the entire country was in shock. It was the first time they'd ever seen a condom going on, and it was like, so that was and do you know what, they haven't done much more since, to be perfectly honest. So we definitely need people to make it as natural as you're saying. You're fabulous, but we have to, I can't go on all day on this because we just don't have the time, and we have to mortify your beautiful twin sister. So I was going to say there's two of you. There really isn't, because you're very different. But I know Amy's watching, so we said mortify her and wait.
Hello, Amy.
Hi, Amy. Because she's in England and she watches this all the time. And and congratulations, she's pregnant, which is fabulous. I hope she can take a leaf out of your book, and because you can feel how relaxed you are and how in tune with just nature and your own rhythms you are. Is Amy good at that?
In a very different way, though. Yeah, Amy is very organized, very practical, incredibly hardworking and very intuitive. And her intuition is she accesses it in a very different way than I do. And she also kind of, it plays out in her life in a very different way as well. Like I definitely more kind of like, ooh, this, but we both feed into each other very beautifully. I always say, like, if we were actually one person, we would be the perfect person, because where I'm not, where she's organized, I'm an absolute mess, and I'm just like la la la,
But
and
still, I mean, you're identical twins. I mean, you've always been tuned into one another's rhythms completely anyway. I mean,
oh
really and
yeah.
truly, two
Mm-hmm.
absolutely stunning girls, I have to say, both of you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's Jenny, I can't talk on because as I say, it's going to be too long. But
I know. Yeah.
I hate seeing you in the morning in Fuel and Vernon Avenue because you just look so, you bounce in a picture when the rest of us are all like dogs sitting with our, looking wrecked. You do look fabulous, and congratulations
Oh,
on the
thank you.
success of your yoga business.
Thank you.
And you're just such a natural yogi, and your photographs are magnificent on Instagram. And you might encourage me to start yoga because I'm getting into
Oh,
that.
please do.
You see, I know, I just kind of feel at my age is the very point, really. But
No, you should try. You should try my class, Debbie, because like my yoga, the yoga that people put out there is like, oh, it's exercise, exercise. My yoga is all about the breath, and the breath
okay,
that drives the movement,
I'm
and it's
going to try it.
very, very meditative. Yeah,
I'm
you
going to try
should.
it.
Please
I'll
do.
try it. I
Yeah.
will. But anyway, you look fabulous. It's just gorgeous to talk to you, and
You
keep up
too.
the fabulous work. And we never even got to COVID, but anyway, it's too depressing. But there's no doubt you'll have yourself sorted going forward, because if people could live like you and be more tuned into nature, maybe we wouldn't have the problems that we have in the world at the moment.
Mm.
So well
Yeah,
done,
yeah.
Penny. You are where we all need to get.
Well, it's possible. I came from Clontarf just like everybody else.
That's true. That is very true. Listen, it's gorgeous talking to you, Jenny. Thanks a million.
Okay.
Keep up
See
the
you
great
later,
work.
Debbie.